which I think could be reasonable.
Question to begin the finance meeting. Can people online hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to begin. Going to call the September 6th meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. Was there proof of notification?
Notification was given, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. We have a 20-point agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve. Motion by Cooey, second by Carroll. All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Previous minutes, we have the minutes from our August 17th meeting. If you agree with those, would you please so indicate, and we'll take a motion on it. Cooey makes the motion.
I'll second.
Carroll seconds. All those in favor of the the previous meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, the first thing on our agenda is short-term borrowing. Discussion and possible action on initial resolution awarding the sale of $1,050,000 taxable general obligation promissory notes for capital improvement projects. Mr. Lambert.
Mr. Chair, looking today to recommend an initial resolution awarding the sale of $1,050,000 in taxable general obligation promissory notes to the Richland County Board. Background on this item: Richland County is preparing to sell promissory notes on 27 October 2022 in order to raise funds for capital improvements and capital maintenance. In order to make final preparations and to go to market, the county must adopt an initial authorization resolution permitting the county to sell up to $1,050,000 of taxable general obligation promissory notes. This resolution must be adopted at a County Board September 2022 meeting by a 3/4 vote majority of those elected. Line change: that should mean 16 yes votes, not 17. 16 yes votes are required to adopt. The following proposed items are included in the proposed capital improvement capital projects plan as recommended through the Strategic Planning Committee. They took action on this last week. There is a change to what we had initially saw to specify out and cue out that there's a request for garage doors to be added to the county highway trunk improvements. That has also been annotated and defined in the plan, estimated at $90,000, which will come out of the $500,000 of apportionment for highway. The attached resolution has been prepared by our bond counsel, Quarles and Brady, as assisted through our municipal advisor, Carol Worth, of Wisconsin Public Finance Professionals. Because this is a short-term loan, it does not require us to submit for a new bond rating and has limited impact with our current underwriters on our existing bonds. Mr. Chair, would defer to Carol Worth, who is online, for any additional questions.
Ms. Worth, do you care to comment?
I think the explanation was perfect. This is the third time that the county is going through the short-term note borrowing. And again, it's due to the challenges of the levy limits. And this short-term note is going to be repaid on March 1st of 2023. So it will only be outstanding for about 4 months. And again, the initial resolution is the first step in the process of giving the county board authority to borrow. You are not borrowing money with the adoption of that resolution. It's just the process, the statutory process that is required. So that is where the 3/4 vote of members elect is required. We will then continue the process of preparing to go into the bond market. We will do that with the preparation of the official statement, which is basically a prospectus on the county. And we will be taking bids from the underwriters on the morning of October 25th. We will present the final results of those bids, the evening meeting of the county board on that same day. And then the closing, when the county receives all of the money, will be on November 22nd. So that is what is going to be happening following the adoption of the initial resolution. So I am available for questions.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, you've heard the, yes, go ahead, Mr. Langrick.
I didn't have anything, Mr. Chair.
Okay. You've heard the explanation. This is the, it's become an annual thing that we do for short-term borrowing. And it's all set up, ready to go. If you're ready to vote on it, I will take a vote. And I just noticed we do have a quorum in attendance with our people online, so.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez
I'll second.
Murphy, seconded by Cooey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, we have approval. Thank you. Discussion and possible action on a municipal advisor agreement. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to recommend resolution to the Richland County Board enter into an agreement with Wisconsin Public Finance Professionals in the amount of $10,500 to provide necessary loan services. Resolution contracting with Wisconsin Public Finance Professionals LLC, Carol Worth, as Richland County Municipal Advisor in order to facilitate the issuance of the promissory notes as previously discussed and take action on. A copy of the contract is included in your package, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And this is paying Carol for her work, the fine work that she does. And I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Cooey,
I'll second that.
Mr. Carroll, it's easy to see them since they're sitting right here. All those in favor of approving the contract with Carol and her firm signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, we have approval. Thank you. And thank you, Carol.
Thank you very much.
Health insurance items. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation from Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott on the 2023 renewal. I'll just call them up if they're ready.
So while they're distributing, Mr. Chair, I'll kind of talk you through the different elements of health insurance considerations today. We're going to begin with a presentation from Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott on plan performance and renewal options. Casey and Jeremy are here representing our firm. Then we're going to have a presentation from myself on the employee trust fund plan costing and features. And then we'll have decision points today on essentially if we want to engage in employee trust or stay with the Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott product. And then potentially a second decision then is if we stay with Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott, what types of features do we want to have included into our plan moving forward? So with that being said, I will tee it up and turn it over to Casey. If you can just let me know what materials that you may like to have presented up here on the screen. I have a copy of your presentation and then the email that you just sent me.
No, you have to turn them on.
Okay,
The switch is on the end.
I think I'm,
You're on.
Okay.
all right, we're green. All right. Thank you again for allowing us to come and present. I know that a lot of you are familiar faces to myself, but my name is Casey Peterson. I work at Wallace Cooper Elliott Insurance Agency across the street. And obviously we've had the pleasure of working with try to negotiate and make sure that we bring the best plan best plan options available on the health insurance. That doesn't involve any handout that you quite have yet. For those of you that have a
Can you
folder in
talk
front
more
of you.
into the mic? You keep cutting out online.
That's right, sorry. I moved my head to see everyone. Apologize. In front of those that are in attendance today, there is a folder, but Clint has graciously offered to also share the 2 files that are in there when we go through them in just a moment. I want to summarize 2023 and what we have done to work with Quartz Health Insurance up to this point and brought us to this position. Historically, for those of you that are familiar with how the claims processes and medical loss ratios have gone for the county, historically we've run high, and what Quartz does is every year they evaluate based on a 12-month period where the claims come in. What is the medical loss ratio? Based on Richland County's demographics, claims history, up with so that is where we want to. In other words, 92% of the premiums that are collected for the insurance is then used to pay the claims. So that is the target. That makes sense. Where we're running currently to date is a little bit higher than that. We are at 102.1%, closer to 103%. So one of the things that allows us to receive our renewal is taken into consideration with that. Another is participation, plan design, and which providers are being used and utilized on an ongoing basis. Originally, Quartz came out with their initial renewal request for the same plan design at 14.9%. So that is higher, obviously, than trend, and trend is at 10.03% for the group. So the reason why we would get higher than trend is obviously for those situations that I mentioned earlier. The claims are running higher than the premiums received. Also, one thing that they look at is ongoing high claims. Are there claimants out there that have a condition where it's anticipated that that condition would be treated going forward for the next 12 months, technically 18 months, and would cause some higher claims issues? With that being said, we did go back to Ron at Quartz Health Insurance, and we asked to give us the best rate that they could. Underwriter director did go through and review, and there are some high claimants that are coming off of the plan or that the conditions are concluding, which is good news. And as a result, they have come in and offered the county their best price at 10.25% renewal. One of the handouts that is in your folder has the Quartz head page and has a summary of exactly what I just went through. The renewal offerings, and I'll wait. I think it's one up. Thank you, Clint. Thank you. So the first one, if you look at HMO 1-1, those of you that are familiar with the past, this is the plan that we are currently on today. And if you scroll down, you will see that the rates that are presented, single and family, are rated at a 10.25% rate increase from 2022. One thing I want to point out is we're currently looking at about 188 employees taking the insurance, more so obviously on the family plans than on single plans. But I just want to make note that over the last few years, specifically the last 3 years, has been a steady decline in those that are taking the insurance. So the reason I bring that up is because if we look at the second attachment that I have, and on the opposite side of the folders, it's an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, it's the Excel. Thank you. Thank you so much. If we can go to the first tab, the Hre Savings. Thank you so much, Clint. This is a summary of what the 2023 health savings could look like. See, we have 188 contracts that we've been rated at for 2023. Obviously, that fluctuates a lot during the year, but that is the number that I'm utilizing for this illustration. And those that are contribution is a scale. There's an 88%, 78%, and 68% contribution by the county, depending upon hours worked. For illustration purposes, I went with 88% for all 188 employees that are taking it. Currently, we have an HRA, Health Reimbursement Account agreement with EBC. EBC facilitates the HRA or the HRA dollars that the county budgets for every year to give to those employees to pay towards and help towards their deductible. So you'll see that the EBC HRA fees are staying steady, $420 per member per month and $300 annual fee. On the current plan design, as we looked at on the last page, $3,000 single deductible, $6,000 family. The employee is responsible today for $2,000 of that single deductible or $4,000 of that family. And the county graciously picks up through the HRA agreement with EBC, $1,000 if you're on a single plan and $2,000 if you're on the family plan. So that is less dollars that come out of the employee, but again, something to look at for budget when it comes to the employer or the county. Down below is an illustration, and the first two lines are steady. The actual premium, if we look at 188 contracts, single and family, is about $3.754 million every year. The 88%, again, this is going to be high, but I wanted to go higher to illustrate, where our cap would be. 3.3 million is what the county would pay if they paid 88% of every employee's premium each month. Again, we have that 78 and 68% based on employees' hours per week. Health reimbursement fees at 188 contracts is $9,775.20. That remains constant. And then the percent the employer contributes to the employee HRA. So remember I mentioned that the county pays 1,000 single or 2,000 family for those deductibles. So here's where that's illustrated. So let's say that 25% of the employees actually reach the amount used for their HRA. So 25% of the single and 25% of the family. So that's 25%, $1,000 for single and $2,000 for family. So what that comes out to is the county reimburses to the employee's deductible through the HRA, $78,500. And the same logic carries at 50%, 75%, or 100%, all 188 employees reach their maximum deductible, and $1,000 single or $2,000 family is contributed by the county through the HRA. So out of pocket, the county would then experience $314,000 if everyone, which is not likely, historically we've seen, reaches their deductible and max. We fall somewhere between 50 and 75% every year based on numbers from EBC, who tracks it, and I know that Tammy looks at that quite a bit, looking at where the dollars are, and it's usually between 50 and 75% of the employees use their deductible to the full max. So if we want to be as accurate as we can be, we would be looking at a budget for 2023 between $3,470,000 and $3,548,000. That would be the more accurate look, as if we did not make any changes to the current plan design. We renew with courts at a 10.25% renewal. We keep the HRA agreement as it is, and again, an estimated 188 employees remain on the plan. I hope I did not go too fast on that. Are there any questions? Okay, great. Then I'm going to just point us, if we can, Clint, go back to the original PDF that courts provided. You'll see there are other plan options on there. The HMO 1-2 and the HMO 1-3, the only difference, we did not change deductibles, we did not change coinsurance, but we changed to a more common prescription drug rider that court sees on larger employers. So currently you see that we have a 10 tier 1, 35 tier 2, and $60 copay for tier 3 medications. Our maximum out of pocket on that is $2,000 single, $4,000 family. That is a separate maximum out of pocket from the maximum out of pocket that you see above at $3,000, $6,000 on the health insurance side of the deductible. The two alternate plans to the right of them just illustrate an opportunity to reduce the premiums, not a whole lot, not too significant, but opportunity to get more in line with what the industry is doing with courts currently. That is adding a specialty RX. Now those are the big medications that are outpatient. Nothing that's inpatient, nothing that is administered when you're in the hospital. But these are the ones that you fill in the pharmacy or a specialty pharmacy, a lot of injections, and these are the more costly. Today, just to give you guys perspective, today most employees pay only $60 a copay for those high-end prescription medications. Adding a fourth tier would then put those medications in that tier, the specialty RX tier, and the employee would then pay $100 out of their pocket instead of $60 for those medications as they fill them. It does increase the maximum out of pocket to $2,350 and $4,700 family. And then you can even go to the next step, HMO 1-3, to save a little bit more dollars and putting the co-payment for those specialty medications up to $200. I wanted to present this. Ron also wanted me to present it from courts because most of the employer groups of the county's size have moved to the last one, 1-3, HMO 1-3. So they're trying to utilize and save more dollars on prescription medication since they are high utilization specifically for the county. So if Clint, if I could have you scroll down a little bit. Maybe a little more. Thank you. As I mentioned, it's not a huge savings. Look at the 10.25% if we keep everything the same as today. 10% if we just add that $100 specialty RX copay and change the maximum out of pocket. And then if we go to the more common in the industry, we'll be saving almost a full point in insurance premiums. Lastly, if you could scroll down for me, Clint, again, thank you. I was in discussions, I was asked to quote an HSA plan, health savings account plan. So how is this a little different than the HRA? The HRA is employer sponsored, and that dollar amount goes into an account with EBC. However, if it's not used in a year, the county claims back the amount that they put into that account. So it is not dollars spent. It does stay in that account to use for the next year or comes back as unclaimed HRA dollars, and the county does not have to account for that expense. The difference is an HSA account is something that the county can choose to contribute to. However, those dollars, if they are contributed to an employee, that money would be lost or put it in the budget, and it would not be gained back if not utilized. And that's an important point. However, an HSA plan is cheaper than your standard traditional HMO plan that we just went through. And in particular, if we kept the deductibles the same at $3,000 single, $6,000 family, with a 0% coinsurance, then we're looking at a reduction in pricing to 7.77% renewal rather than the 10.25 renewal. HSA plans work a little differently in that the health savings account plans have to have all services apply towards the deductible. That includes prescription. So it's a big thing to point out is prescriptions right now have a copay under the health savings account. They would not have a copay, and those larger dollar amounts for those specialty medications would be applied towards meeting that deductible. So that would be amount due at the time of the fill of the medication. However, the great thing is there's a tax savings. So if someone contributes to their HSA, and maybe the Richland County decides to contribute to the HSA, those are pre-tax dollars that are put in, similar to an FSA, flex spending account. And the employee contributes to that. And the nice thing, different from a flex spending account, is that you do not lose any money if you roll it over. So let's say you contribute $1,000 to your HSA account, and you did not need that money. So next year you do not lose it. It just continues to roll over. One thing to note, the employee owns the HSA account and not the employer, very different than the HRA. And so they can continue to contribute to the allowable max every year, as well as carry it with them if they retire or take a position elsewhere. So the HSA does continue and follow the employee. So I brought this to the attention because I asked courts, and they are willing to offer both. If the HRA was working well and we still wanted to continue with that, an HSA with the same deductibles could come alongside it and offer it to those that might want to take that. There is some changes that would need to be made. The flex spending account would need to be put to a limited flex spending account rather than where it's at right now, but we can work on that. And that shouldn't interfere with those that are on the HSA, because they can use HSA dollars for everything that can be used for the flex today as the way it is set up. So it's a trade-off, just a different account. But I did put in another summary on the Excel spreadsheet of, let's just propose that the county decided to change to an HSA plan rather than sit with the HRA plan today. So a complete takeover of moving everybody from an HRA to an HSA plan with the same deductibles, same coinsurance, and same maximum out of pockets. Everything else remains the same, except for I want to make a special note here. Underneath, if you could scroll down a little bit. Yep, a little bit up, sorry, Clint. There we go. Where it says county annual HSA contributions. What I did for illustration purposes here is currently, as we just mentioned, the HRA has a $1,000 single contribution or a $2,000 family contribution from the county. I assume the same thing. And again, please note that once these 1,000 and 2,000 amounts have been put into the employee's HSA account, that is not recoverable by the county. So that is then owned by the employee. So this is an expense that is there. It would not vary. That's why you don't see percentages at the annual cost estimates below, because those are standard stable pricing. So if everybody moved over, for example, the premiums would be different. Annual premiums 3.6 million. 88% of it would be 3.2. Fees, health savings account fees, similar to the HRA fees, around 10,000. They're a little bit more. I haven't gotten the exact quote, but it won't vary much by that. And then the health savings account contribution plus the 88% plus the 88%, if you want to scroll down, Clint, sorry. Thank you. The last two lines, there we go. So the health savings account contribution looks very similar. You've seen this number already, $314,000. That is if 100% of the employees actually met the HRA deductible. So that would remain constant if all of them were on an HSA. So the annual expenses would be 3.5 million, which is right in the middle of where the HRA budget would be, between 50 and 75% people utilizing the health reimbursement account. I bring these options to give a recommendation of not making too much of a change for 2023 at this time. With the negotiations and the partnership we have with Quartz Health Insurance, they have definitely come out with their best rate at 10.2% to 5% renewal. And I would propose that we stick with a health reimbursement account. People are familiar with it. But if the boards and the employees is felt so inclined, offering a second option of an HSA is definitely doable and would not be something I would have, I mean, I would suggest maybe offering that if we were going to make any changes.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said an option. I mean, could the employee say, I want an HSA, I don't want an HRA?
Yes,
So it'd go employee by employee.
yes.
Okay.
But again, both those numbers would fall, if you look at the larger numbers, of course, in the 3 millions, all three of the numbers that we looked at would fall within the same range. So offering an HSA wouldn't be,
Across the spectrum of health products you provide, what is the most desirable? What do people want, an HSA or an HRA?
I will say that the trend right now, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, is more employers and employees are going towards HSA plans.
Oh, okay.
They can carry it over. It's a tax savings for both the employer and the employee.
It's portable, in other words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just a few questions for clarification's sake. If I can confirm, when we were talking about the changes to the existing HRA type plan, we were talking on the specialty RXs. I want to confirm that, say if we were to move to the higher specialty of $100 and $200, that's per prescription fill. And then it's capped at 100, 200. And then as you continue to need prescriptions, then you're building towards your max out of pocket for pharmaceuticals. Is that correct?
Yes,
Correct.
each time, yes.
Okay. Second one is with the HSA type of a contribution, unlike our HRA account, HSA dollars can be used at the front end of a deductible, or if you're saving it up, you can use it for the entire deductible. Is that true and accurate?
Absolutely. And you can use those, for example, a lot of times they have an HSA account has a debit card. So if you get, you have to fill a medication at the pharmacy, you pay with the debit card with the HSA right there and then. It can be used for deductible plans. HSA authorized services or authorized products that you can purchase are pretty vast when it comes to medically necessary. So you can utilize it at any point of the deductible, or you can wait to get the bill.
But we'll have to do some retraining and making sure everybody understands that if you have HSA versus HRA and when and how it can be used, and
Yes.
Qualifying expenses though are pretty much the same though. Is that qualified medical expenses?
There would be, you're right, absolutely, Clint. There would be a lot of education that we're willing to help with. And, when you can use the HSA versus the FSA is where the big education is going to come in. So that would be the biggest change people would see.
Okay, thank you. Clint, do you have more information now for us?
Well, I'm going to try to give my best presentation as I can on the state plan, to try to educate you folks on that aspect of it. So the state plan, we were there. We had it up until a few years ago. Got my opening here. So it's kind of the first thing that you need to understand with the state different plans is when you hear the state plan is it's kind of broken down into different designs. And then from there you have your different plans or your different providers. The best illustration is if you look, if I have it under here, you go to, they used to have a really nice spreadsheet right on their front of their website that they house this, and then they kind of redid their website, and it frustrated me so. But if you go underneath the handbook, you can find the different plan breakdowns underneath page 14 of 169 on their employer handbook 1144. So it shows your different options of, you have to get familiar with these terms of P12 or P2 or P12, P4, P14, P6 or P16, and then your P7 or P17. And the difference between those are a 2 has a dental plan with it and a 12 does not, and likewise the 4 does have a dental included and the 14 does not. It breaks it down into the different plans with what our deductibles are at this first line. The P12 plan is what you folks were on many years ago when you were with the state plan. I think you switched to the 14 for maybe 1 year before you transitioned with Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott. So it was a no deductible, zero deductible plan. The different ones that are currently offered by the state is the 12, the no deductibles. You have the 14, which is the deductible plan. Then you have the local deductible plan of $250 and $500, and then you have the high deductible plan of $1,500 and $300. Moving down, you can then kind of match them across the different plans with the different features on it. And then it does cost, your pharmaceutical out-of-pockets remain the same for all the different designs, if you will, okay? So that's kind of the first element that you got to kind of house in your brain as we talk about these things. And let me switch my view back to the PDF here. Bear with me. Are the different plan designs. Past that, then we start talking about the different insurance plans or the providers. Each group has, or area of the U.S. or the area of Wisconsin has different healthcare plans, of course, in there. They're tracked by the ETF and placed into different tier ratings. I'm hoping this pulls up. I'm going to have to bounce back and forth here, but they put together a nice little spreadsheet each year that shows the different tier 1 rated plans for each county. And if we were to scroll on this sheet here to Richland County, the different plans that are considered tier 1 and offered through the ETF is the Dean Health Insurance Plan, Health Partners Health Plan, Court Central, and then your local, it's your choice access plan, which is I think a straight open PPO type plan. How they figure their amounts that an employer can legally cover with premiums is based on a tiered average, and so they establish the first column there. You'll see that they have they've established it at 88% of the tier 1 plans. Average premiums is how they establish what the minimum is that an employer can provide and the cost share for the premium amount. So you'll see the first 3 columns is a single cost in which it establishes the maximum employer contribution, the minimum employer contribution, and the total premium. And then the next 3 columns do that same way for the family plan. So we zoom back down to Richland County. You'll notice that our plans, our best cost plan, or our most economic plan, is going to be a Dean plan, and it breaks it down then for the maximum that an employer can contribute is $600, the minimum then employee, and then the total, and then the same for the family plan, what the employee's minimum is, and then the total premium at the end for a month. And so you'll see that if the employers would have access to choose a different plan or a different healthcare provider, that the county's share remains constant at that average 88% amount, and the employer picks up the additional premiums if they want to deviate and do something different. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. All right, bear with me while I flip back now to my next element here. And so then when you're looking at the cost benefits, and with the P17 being the most economical package, they also have the different plan features that they show on there, which kind of breaks down, again, the annual deductible, and it shows the primary costs and what is covered and what is not, and gives you a basic summary of benefits type of a plan that you would see with our courts plan. So that's in your packet to kind of compare and to view. For the most part, it's comparable, and it's something that we were kind of once a part of. And as I flip back here again, bear with me. The next element for consideration is how does that cost compare essentially when you're looking at our current plan? What does it mean, dollars and cents, if you will? And so I ran a spreadsheet here to try to capture what our forecasting would be to marry the two together. And I will try to pull that up for you folks here. It's item number 07F. 07F is in Foxtrot, the forecasting document. And so this takes into account then, I'm working with Tammy, running some numbers on this. We took our current existing plan and we broke that down, our quartz plan, at what a monthly premium would look like. This is really tiny. Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit. That's a little bit better. So we kind of took the same thing where we took the employee share, county share premium for a single plan. We did the same then for a family of employee, 12%, county at 88% in a premium share. And we did that also then for the quartz plans through Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott. We did that for the different options, the three HMO1 plans, and then the two HMO2 or HSA plans. And then we also costed the P17 plan, which is the ETF's version of a high deductible plan. And again, that's the $1,500, $3,000. We also then included the P12 plan, which is the zero deductible plan, which is where we were at many years ago. And then we also thought, well, that might get expensive for the county. So what if we did a P12 plan and we changed the premium share from a 1288 to a 2080 premium shares? That's what the numbers that you're looking there on the left. And we costed those out to kind of see what it would look like in trying to forecast the future. None of us having a magic 8 ball in the office. Well, no, wait, let me take that back, Jeff. We do have a magic 8 ball. It doesn't do a very good job at predicting our health insurance numbers. So you're looking at 2023 and carrying the numbers over of what the anticipated financial impact is with a 10.25. Not knowing what the future looks like, we kind of took about the same thing and added a 10% increase and used that as a baseline going across the top for 2024 and 2025. And again, this would be the Wallace Cooper Elliott HMO1 plan, or the HRA, essentially the status quo plan. As a range, we put that on there then with the HSA plan, or the HMO2 plan, to kind of show what that total amount of savings potentially could be if we were to switch to that, and using that as baseline across. Perhaps we save $116,000 in switching to an HSA plan. This is just in premium contribution. It doesn't include our HRA to HSA type of a switch, but just in premium contribution on what that savings would be, and tried to forecast that out. So we tried to do the same thing then with the state plans. Coming across from the P17 plan, we had the surcharge in there, and you'll see the surcharge letter that we received. Essentially, we have a 20% surcharge in the first year, a 10% surcharge in the second year, and then we'd be on to the regular premium rates and following in the third year. So we took that estimated cost, and to access it going into next year, we'd see a premium total expense of about $142,000 increase. Now, moving forward into the next year, using the same type of trends, forecasting that they'd potentially have the same type of a trend number, and taking out the surcharge, which was in the front end, estimating maybe a 4.5% increase for that plan, then perhaps gets you at a $33,000 underage of what our plan potentially would trend at. And then the same, possibly a 3.5 if you took the total surcharge out going into the next year. Maybe there's a savings of 272, but that's really based on trying to guess at what plan performance would be. That would be assuming essentially the same type of trends on our plans versus ETF plans going forward into those years, which I don't know if I'm terribly confident in, but I don't know what else of a benchmark to shoot at. So we did the same thing then for the two P12 plans with the no deductibles, and arrive at much larger numbers. Again, maybe they trend better than our existing plan, but I don't know that for sure. Tried to consider that maybe they're a bigger group, so they have a little bit more numbers coming in to flow, where they wouldn't have quite as volatile, but I don't know that. The other numbers then that we'd figure in, as we talked about, is the HRA amounts, because these don't factor into an HRA amount. So if you switch to a state plan, okay, what do you do with an HRA? Does that take off the table? And that would be my recommendation, is if we do, So in taking that off the table, you arrive at about a $310,000 budget amount of reduction in expenditure and maybe an actual $150,000 of actual expenditures based on that ratio of anywhere from 50 to 75%. With that $150,000 though, do you really count that as a true experience kind of a savings? I don't know, because the other things we would have to factor in is that we're going to lose Wallace and Cooper Elliott for some of our admin support with our legal guidance that we'd have to kind of make up for. And the other part of it is if the state plan is more desirable than our existing plan, we could potentially have more participation, which means more premiums. And how much of that $150,000 from your HRA stays in pocket versus goes towards more premium expenses, I don't know that either. But this was kind of done as a, again, as an exercise to try to give that feeling of, well, we spent $3,000 down on having ETF cost our plan to know what it would look like for us to get into it. So what does that look like to us over the course of the next 3-4 years and trying to get past that surcharge? I think I'll pause maybe right there for any types of questions or considerations, or if anybody wants to take any shots at my numbers or projections, by all means.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Administrator, I have a question. The reason that the state plan seems more attractive to me is because, and I'll throw this question over to these folks too, it's rated as a group of state plans, whereas our courts plan seems to be rated on the basis of our own group experience. Am I right or wrong in that observation?
I'd say it's a combination of both. I mean, because when the state did the cost analysis, they took into account a lot of the claims for the county, but yes, that is going to be spread out across the group. So it's kind of utilizing both sets of numbers. But yeah, for our purposes, it's just the county itself.
And if I could add to that, the county as its single entity, an employer health plan, it is 85% credible. So that means that 85% of the premium that's derived is it comes from the claims of the people in Richland County, employees and their dependents that are on the plan. Very different, yet similar to the employee trust fund plan where the pool is bigger. And so the top 10 claims on the Richland County health plan today might not be the top 10 claims in that particular plan for all of those employers that are on that one program, like the P17. So it is yes and no, like Jeremy said, but at the same time too, we are, given the size of the county and how long we've been with courts, we're 85% credible. So it is a reflection of our claims, our renewal with them.
Thank you.
Question?
One other observation, Clint, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, people in the back of the room, but it seems to me that I've heard from employees, county employees, we'd like to go back to the state plan. But I think that that's a desire to go back to the richer state plan that we had before we went to the courts plan. And in the considerations that were thrown up here, we weren't considering, that wasn't a consideration. Is that correct, Administrator Langrick?
I can't speak for everybody on their level of understanding and knowledge on when they hear state plan, if they think if it's full on high deductible plan or if it's the low deductible plan. I know that I think the city still operates on a P12 plan or a no deductible plan.
They have a deductible.
They do have a deductible now? Okay.
I know the campus has a deductible as well.
Okay, so even our local folks are also working on a deductible plan. To try to show here, Tammy Hendrickson, who's diligently working at payroll on a short week, put together this kind of form here to kind of show the two. And this possibly answers the question then that was also on, that we saw in the chat. So the two plans kind of where we're operating right now will get kind of compared here line to line. Wisconsin Counties Association through courts are operating with a 3,000, 1,000, and then we have the max out of pocket of 6 and 2. We also have though the consideration for the HRAs in there, comparing that against the state plan of 15 and 3,000 with the max out of pockets of 25 and then the max out of pockets at 5. There's different considerations for the max out of pockets later on, as the P17 plan actually has a higher prescription out of pocket that you'd have to consider, as well as some additional co-pays that also have to be considered for. So it's hard to, at a deductible kind of a rate. If the county was considering a P17, I would recommend that the HRA then comes off the table. Then you would be looking at then still folks would have combinations of their medical experiences or different conditions they have to try to figure out what's going to be a better choice for them. Could still be an individual decision. Some other consideration factors in the transition here that we're aware of is if we're changing and switching to ETF, again, ETF does not work through a broker, so it doesn't have the same level of service support for employees with concerns on enrollment or billing concerns. That would be a thing we're going to have to factor for. This will require employee and member ownership of addressing billing concerns involving their plan and providers and seeking out education on their plans. Other employer support, we do have access to the main portal. There are folks that we can send emails to. Some are more responsive to others, but overall it's going to be a reduced amount of employer support with an ETF type of a system. The service support through ETF can be more challenged, heavy lifting on enrollments, the benefit education aspect, kind of like what I'm doing for you here today is, there's no brokers to really go to bat from. They do have different webinars. They do have a live cast that they do. So there are opportunities are there. It's just less personalized and it's more kind of all-inclusive type of elements. Administrator's office will need data entry support if we're going to enroll with it. Is an extensive data support that we'll need for the enrollment period. We'd be looking to recruit several capable employees from departments. Several departments have offered that they would be willing to help if the county were to go forward with this. We'll be looking for potential employment law notification support, COBRA notification support contractor, or some type of a support mechanism there to keep us up to abreast on employment law with those types of things, as we do rely on Wallace, Cooper, and Elliott for help on those. We'll lose some flexibility in our plan design. The options brought forward today with having 5 different plans of HMO1s plus consideration for pharmaceuticals and HSAs. I mean, those things kind of get reduced, and kind of the main lever that we'd have left to still kind of control is how much of a premium share that you'd want to engage with. Other aspects of consideration is eligibility will be expanded to all employees that are eligible to WRS retirement, which may include call-ins, which may not. Some of them already may be based on the hours that they work, as well as there are some other minor imputed costs, say as an example with our wellness, a monetary benefit, and making sure that we receive that for W-2s at the end of the year. Historically, we've had some trouble in making sure that those come back to us so that we can file them in the same quarter. Small decal, technical type of a thing, but it can lead to some significant hours on our end in trying to get all those things put together. So those are kind of the dollars. Those are kind of the very broad sharing on the 2 different types of plans and coverages on it. We do have some history with ETF. You know what it feels like. You know what the challenges are. I think some of you were on the committee even at the time during the transition with it. But that's kind of where we're costing. From a straight dollar perspective, I'd say really the savings potentially arrives at a reduction of an HRA and then kind of banking on their plan performance doing better than our small group performance here is where you may or may not arrive at a total cost savings. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any wish on the committee to take action on this today? Mr. Carroll.
There's a lot to take in here, and I wouldn't mind being able to study the numbers more and discuss it more, but what kind of time constraint do we have again?
Mr. Administrator?
So am I too close?
No,
Is this
you're
okay right
good.
here?
Marty, I need you to back your mic up a little bit.
No.
It's a behavior change. We're used to the last set of them where you had to kind of have right on the end of your teeth. This one's a little different. Okay. So if we want to engage in joint ETF effective January 1st, we have to give 90-day notice. That backs up a timeline then for notice has to be given by resolution, which means that the September 20th county board meeting would have to be a decision point if we want to start with it on January 1st going forward into next year. Now, I think you can enroll each quarter, I think, is when you can go, but then that would require giving courts a notice on, we would want to do something short-term in like a half of a year or a quarter or something of that nature if we're going to join past January 1st.
So the answer to that is yes and no. There is time constraint. But if we really, really needed it, we could delay that. Right now, I'm inclined, my recommendation would be to stay where we are and giving a lot of weight to the fine administrative work that is provided across the street. And I submit that it probably, well, not probably, it has delayed adding to the administrative staff in the administrator's office up until this point. So we've gotten a few more months or years out of having that coordination. And from what the stories, anecdotal stories I've heard, the help is much appreciated, and the explanation to employees is good. But I'll stand corrected if anyone has anything to add to that. Yes.
So I'm gonna stand up here and I'm gonna say what I've heard from employees. And I'm putting myself out there because I'm a vulnerable employee. I can be asked not to. My department deals with all departments. I hear the chatter among the departments. And I'm not speaking for everyone, but I'm gonna tell you the majority of people I've spoken to want to switch back. If you would take the time even and lay this out to your employees, I think you're gonna find that a lot of people are holding on and not choosing to look for employment other places because they know you're still considering the state plan. I think that there are a lot of people that won't hold on after we make this decision.
But what state plan are they?
They know it's the one with the high deductible.
They
They're
do.
well aware.
Okay. That was Barb Scott, our IS director, speaking on behalf of all employees.
No. That's not what I said.
No, okay. Giving
Mr.
us
Chair.
anecdotal information. Yes, is that who's?
Melissa, this is Melissa, look.
Ms. Luck, please take the floor.
And that was gonna be my main question was, what do the employees, now that they've seen the numbers and what the plan actually entails as far as what their premiums, what their deductible will be, I would very much like to know, once they've seen all these numbers, if they still want to switch.
A lot of them have already seen those numbers because they're available online, and I think that they're aware of it, and we're anticipating a switch.
I'm saying I think we should officially
Oh,
survey our employees and ask them.
Okay, Ms. Luck, you're suggesting that we survey employees?
I realize that we're on a time constraint, which means we'd end up having yet another finance meeting before county board to make this decision, but
We can do that.
But yeah, I really think that I would be more comfortable making the decision if I heard from the employees with them understanding that the plan cost is going to cost the county more, and we may end up having to pass that cost on to them. But, and I will make one other comment. So I'm a part of the ETF insurance. Since I left the university, I'm still on that, and I have never had a problem getting help on it or with any questions. I have Dean Insurance. All I do is call and they are very helpful. I've never had any problems figuring out claims or whatever. So my personal experience is I've not had any problems dealing with it on my own. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Thank you. I think this is an important question and one that deserves proper consideration. So my inclination at this point is to direct Administrator Langdrick to provide a survey of sorts to employees, find out what they want and meet with this committee whenever we have to in the next 2 weeks, let's say. Does that give us time enough to survey employees? 2 weeks?
A couple elements to it. No problem in putting together a survey, but I'd like to know exactly what questions that you'd want to know and what options you'd want to consider. If we put out there on a open type of a thing, I, as one of your employees, going to say, boy, it'd be great to have a P2 plan with, or P12 plan with no deductible and have the county pick up everything. My household would like that. So I need to know exactly what do you want to have considered on the table, because my inclination is that if it's going to still come down to a financial decision on kind of meeting what is in the best interest of the budget, I don't want to see us put in a situation where we're surveying, getting a response back, not liking that survey, and then essentially kind of putting a stick in somebody's eye of asking your opinion and then not taking it. So that would be my caution, but you let me know exactly kind of what do you think is there, and we can pose that to the employees.
Committee, what is your thought and wishes?
Well, I guess I'd want to compare what our current plan is and the one that's resembles, the same. I mean, you don't want to compare apples and oranges. You got to give everybody the benefit of the doubt here. I mean, yeah, I would agree. Everybody's going to want the one that pays for everything. Yeah, that's what I should have.
Mr. Chair, that was my intention. I think it's the P17 plan is the one, or whatever plan that was. I agree. Let's compare the plan that we would most likely, from a financial standpoint, be able to do as a county.
So looking to compare our existing kind of our status quo at the 10.25 renewal one against the P17 plan without HRA, is that correct?
Correct.
Ms. Luck, this is Chairman Brewer asking you a question. Would you be willing to help in this endeavor?
Sure.
Well, good. Thank you. Well, we'll try to put together a survey then and have the next finance and personnel meeting in a timely fashion, so it can be whatever decision we make will be incorporated in the budget.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would be curious to know if the rest of the committee is okay with this.
Right. The rest of the finance committee, what do you think? Right now, we're proceeding on the basis of a survey, delaying a final decision on this until we look at the results of the survey. And we're looking at as similar a plan as we can to the one we currently have.
I would agree. That's all I've heard over my time on the board is talk of this state plan versus what we currently have. So I'm in favor.
Mr. Carroll?
Well, like I said before, I'd like to have a little more time to study the numbers, but I think you're right. We need to make sure that the choices are as similar as possible.
Other members of the Finance Committee, Ms. Luck, Mr. Murphy Lopez, are you available?
Mr. Chair, yeah. So I would just say, I don't have any problem with the survey at all. I do think the survey should be forthright about the increase in the cost to employees, and the premium for switching to the, and showing what the county's increased cost too. I think that would also be good context. So, the county's contribution is going to go from this to this. Your contribution would go to from this to this. Is this something you want to do? I don't know. I just don't know that everyone would have researched these numbers. And sometimes I think you just got to put things right in front of people to get a reaction.
Sure. Mr. Gotchel, I see you're on. You have a thought.
Yeah, I would be in favor of a survey as it is being presented. Anecdotally, I am a ETF employee currently, and I've never had any administrative issues. And I think the state plan offers us a little more protection, maybe even beyond year 2025. I think we're a little less vulnerable than independent, knowing that there's going to be some interruption to the healthcare market coming soon.
Okay, thank you. Interruption, okay. I'll leave that up to interpretation, I guess. Nurses are striking, by the way. Not only here, but in neighboring states, so that may be an interruption that was unanticipated. Anyone else on the Finance Committee? Let's see. Who else do we have there? I hear Mr. Seep. Do you want to make a comment?
Well, thank you very kindly. You're very good at reading communications that are not in the English language. I have one question, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I misunderstood this, but I thought that there is the current plan, there is two deductibles, one for prescription drugs and one for the medical part. Is that correct? And would that be the same case with the ETF plan?
Mr. Langrick, do you have an answer to that?
How about now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we have max out of pockets for prescriptions on the plan that we're currently on. And if we're considering the P17 state high deductible plan, there's also that comes to the tune for our plan of 2,000 single, 4,000 family. For the state plan, 2,500 single, 5,000 for a family. Does that answer your question, Supervisor Seep?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, why doesn't someone make a motion about doing the survey? Then we can proceed with our agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Cooley makes the motion. We proceed with the survey.
I'll second.
Second by Luck. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Survey says continue the agenda. Thank you. Takes us down to the 2023 budget items. And Administrator Langrick, your presentation of the 23 budget.
Mr. Chair, looking for a motion potentially today. Initially looking for, prior to discussion and changes, if you'd be so kind to entertain a motion to require that all committee members' proposals to adjust the budget be balanced with all impacts and expenditures offset with adjustments to funding sources or revenues. Essentially, if we're going to make changes and we want to reincorporate things or things to take off, that we have offsetting expenditures so that it balances out. And then looking potentially for a finalization motion, whether it comes today or at a future meeting, Motion to accept the finalized budget with amendments or without direct administration and departments to make adjustments accordingly. Direct the county clerk to make necessary public postings and then to present to Richland County Board for consideration and adoption in its meeting in October. So this is going to be the kind of the formal layout on what a 2023 budget is proposed to you today. You can make actions on it today. If you want to sit and digest on it, you would have opportunity yet for another meeting. We would like to get this though, if we would have a chance for another meeting if we were to do it in late September. We will have to have, well, maybe if we did in conjunction, if you're trying to do one yet before the 20th for county board, you can still take action on that one, but essentially we have to get it off to the papers on October 3rd so that we meet the posting requirements prior to the hearing and county board action at the end of October, if that all makes sense on a timeline. So background on this is an effort to finalize the 2023 budget for consideration and adoption by the Richland County Board. The Finance and Personnel Committee will be considering proposals of adjustments made by the county administrator. It is intended that the committee will make all final adjustments in this meeting and take action to present the budget to the county board for consideration and adoption. Attached is a gap tracking spreadsheet with adjustments and proposals by the administrator to balance the budget, and then the budget as presented through the budget worksheets as it's currently into the system. So in your packet, you're going to see several different items 10A, 10B, 10C, and 10D. At a first glance, let's open up item number 10B. This is an item that you should be familiar with. It's our tried and true budget summary that would actually get adopted by the county board. It's an extensive document that kind of goes through the summary page on the front sheet. It is then contains all your expenditures as currently in the system, all your revenues. The last two pages then are dedicated to highway specifically, and then towards our debt service schedule. Items that stand out here on this first page is if you look on the first page of the summary, you'll be looking at your line number 28 there, the proposed budget going across for 2022. You're going to see that our current budget is about 10.4 or almost 10.5 million. And then that's reduced down to $10,376 as in the system. Why is that a reduction, you might ask? So currently that equates to approximately about $70,000 reduction, of which about $66,000 is for debt service reduction and $4,000 in bridge aid. Right now, we don't have the radio tower project built into the budget, as we don't intend to take actions on it until January, February. So at that time, with things carrying on, and we would be looking to do a budget amendment then in February or March to include those types of numbers. So with our reduced debt service in there from paying off this last year's principals and such, that's why you're seeing a reduction.
Administrator Langrick, what would that 10,376 figure be? Let's say that the tower project were included right now.
I don't have that. I'd have to reference back to the documents provided by Carol Worth on how much debt service that gets included on there. I don't have that figured into this at this time, but I can bring that forward.
Right, thank you.
Because with doing that bonding, it will actually be, to be an impact on your 2024 tax and
Trying to get a feel for
Sure, to understand what that is.
our taxpayers.
Yep, understood. So then the other documents that you can see in there then, prepared by our county clerk and finance officer, is a breakdown then of what it looks like on 10C by department and functions. And you'll see the total changes in there. And then this kind of puts in there then an estimate then of what our current projected where we're at with our debt levy gap is calculated in here. You'll see the bottom line of a difference of about 21,000 to the good that we're in. And the reason this is so at the moment is because we have some figurines that were not calculated in there, including, we'll get through it, but right now we're at, in the projection here, of about a 21,000 gap to the good as what's in the, currently what's logged into our system. And then the final document that you'll see in there, and again, this is kind of an administrative accounting document, but it's in here for you to see, is a breakdown of distribution by fund, and that's item number 10D. So trying to make sense of all these, and I don't know if it does or if it makes it more complicated, but it's how we've come to kind of practice. We put together yet another spreadsheet. On item number 10A, you'll see the gap tracking spreadsheet. And this is broken down kind of in the same way as we had done in previous year's budget, as well as how we've put together the financial planning document. The first section here, the first couple pages, is all section 1. It includes the different changes, adjustments from your 2022 budget that were all put into the preliminary guidance that went out to departments informing the budget. So the top sections, the C1 through the E3s, is kind of all your levy impacts from the different section or different known expenses that we were going to have with wages and insurances. Items number AA through FF are kind of our impacts to revenues that we're anticipating, including lost utilization of using contingency funds from last year, as well as undesignated general funds. As you hit then line, and that arrives then at your total of about a $1.1 million gap that we were identifying when we were doing the forecasting. We go through the different department expenses again, and these are the ones kind of built into the preliminary guidance, starting with Health and Human Services, kind of running all the way down into to the bottom of, the top of page 5 of 8. You'll have all your department impacts and the different the additional expenditures versus reductions. Items 203.01 through 224.01 is then your additional kind of levers that we talked about pulling again to fix the budget. You'll see the large amount of ARPA funds there at $882,000 of essentially fund balance used to kind of balance that out, which leaves a preliminary gap by forecast of about $122,200 is what was left out, and I'll show that below. But marry that up with then our anticipated expenditures that are in there equals then about the same $21,134.54 that's currently in the system. So some of the adjustments that we have to know that we have to make of what accounts for some of that, like the 122 as I had in there, the 114 for wages and compensations. I failed in telling departments, moving into section 2, to incorporate a 1-week withholding. This is something we talked about doing this current year when we did a 1-week withholding. Now we're going to incorporate a 2nd week withholding so that we're getting time cards and such submitted to payroll as true and accurate and without projections. This does come as a shifted forward expense of about $135,000 that will be pushed essentially kind of forward into 2024 if you visualize it. Of course, paid out to employees if they separate. There's also then the increase of the added 5% for general employees, bringing them from 4.5% up to 5%. There's the incorporation of adding, we took action to incorporate the UW extensions, $4,914 in operational expenses, as well as GIS or GCS software, and the Fiddler project of an added $6,000. There was also built into the budget projection of about $108,000 that was anticipated for probation sanctions revenues. Recalculations on that brought that more down to $60,000 or so, which is a reduction or an added gap of what's in the system of $48,000. But then our health insurance costs came in below. We had figured 15%, and if we were to go with a baseline with the Wallace Cooper and Elliott, we'd have a reduction there of about $82,000 in total expenses. And so after the preliminary adjustments, bringing that down $115,000, our estimated gap of what should be in the system and then arrives at about $136,945. So again, that's the added pieces now that we didn't put in the system from when we got the numbers back based on the decision points and the numbers that have come back, gives us about $136,000 or $137,000 of added space that you can put back in. Keep in mind, though, that's built on using ARPA funds and some other types of structural deficit. So then the 2 proposed actions that are out there from departments that are, or 3 that are on there, proposed by departments. There's a request from child support to incorporate a 16-week position, which is a 66% offset to the state, which equates to about $5,094.60, of which is recommended by myself today, but is done so with a reduction from above of 3,500 and from the administrator's budget for training. And then also reductions from airport. Their budget came in under where we anticipated for an offset of 2,000 to balance that out. There is a petition yet for the jail administrator's position, which is on here, which is not recommended by myself today, but you do have the numbers on here to understand what that would look like, and you have options to entertain if you wanted to initiate that. The other item that is on here but is not costed would be to entertain yet a wage change for ambulance. Talking with Director Gudgeon, he does have another type of an idea of which he's looking to gain audience with you in the future to see if you would entertain. Again, that would not come as a estimated levy expense, though. He's anticipating that that's going to come out of operational expenses or out of fund balance through the ambulance fund. Health insurance on here, these are not incorporated into it, but are kind of place markers based on our discussion that we have and discussions to come up in the future. If we were to go to the P17 plan, again, estimating it potentially about $142,000 off that one forecasting sheet that we had on there. I'm anticipating about 53% of that to be actual levy impact and about 47% of that to be absorbed by Pine Valley Highway, other types of offsets and revenues for a total impact of $74,000. Likewise, then, if there's an HRA reduction with that package, using the same 43% on a potential $150,000 of expenditure, arrives at about almost $80,000 savings. Health insurance, if we were to go with what was on there for the H2 HSA plan, the lowest costing plan through Wallace Cooper and Elliott, arrived at about a $61,000 reduction again in premium shares. So those are on there as placeholders. They're not anticipated or built into the budget. So carrying forward, then we still have the same gap from above of $137 to the good, if you will. So then recommending offset for the American Rescue Plan, putting $137 or $137,000 then into the following year, essentially reducing the total expenditure of $880,000 or so by $137,000 to preserve those funds for needed decisions yet going forward into the following year. And that is kind of where we are arrived. We still have placeholders for all the other different actions that can be maneuvered by the committee, but that is where we're at to arrive at a zero balance budget as of today. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Members of the Finance and Personnel Committee, do you have questions and or comments?
Question.
Mr. Carroll.
Section 3, the proposed amendments awaiting action. When do we expect we'll know which way they'll go?
So these are right now are my recommendations too. I've got in here, if you look underneath the adjustments, I'm recommending child support position be incorporated with the other reductions to offset it. And I'm not recommending at this time the sheriff's office position. And I've got it on here, but we would need further action on if we're going to take action on Darren's incorporation for changes for his wages. So we'd have to almost kind of treat it if like I say, if we wanted to do Darren's, if you wanted to take action on his, we could do it before the budget. It would be included in the budget as it's not a levy offset. You could do it post budget, and we'd have to adjust the budget, but it wouldn't impact our levy and how much we're taxing. Does that make sense?
So
because it's going to be offset by
revenue. This committee that would have to take action.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So,
did I answer that, or did I make it more confusing, Steve?
so the understanding of that, as I look down through that budget, we have other areas throughout the county where we're trying to add wage to for retaining, and it has a negative levy impact by the looks of it. If you go up to HHS, I think you see that it's a negative $22,000 or whatever for recruitment. And if we got ambulance, it's not going to have a negative effect on the levy. It seems real easy for me to say, let's make sure we get Darren's approach in there, or whatever you want to call it, and let's go forward with that, because it isn't going to affect this budget anyway.
It'll impact kind of two things. It'll still impact the budget overall, because we're going to have to account for increased expenditures and increased revenues on the accounting side of it, but it's not going to impact how we're going to be taxing people. The second element of course, not to overlook is going to be the social comparison qualities of, again, touching another department without other departments on it. Now, that becomes an animal in of itself, but from a monetary perspective, no, it doesn't impact your ability to pay myself and other department staff.
But I think if you look at this is a reclassification. And I think if we looked at the ambulance, what they're classified under, it would fall in the same.
Yeah, and Darren, do you mind do you mind if we entertain this?
Yes,
right now?
please.
Okay.
do.
So, in talking with Director Gudgeon this morning, we had talking points, I believe, at the last meeting where we talked about trying to consider a reclassification and moving some of the positions onto Pine Valley's wage schedule. Complexity on that and concerns again for is it over rocking the boat and really trying to get trying to address Director Gudgeon's concerns on overall dollar value. Director Gudgeon has kind of come back with an alternative type of approach to it, of which I can let him expound upon. And I have a have your copy here if you want to reference it, but I don't have it in digits.
Okay. So going back to what Supervisor Cooey was representing, I had taken to my committee the idea of a reclassification and had talked to Director Rislow about that. Looking at the numbers and the process that we're going through there, trying to get a hold of Carlson Detman, we want to make sure that all those ducks are in a row. We've got a couple other steps in there. I felt that that process was going to be too rushed and might not put us where we need to be. And so looking at another alternative was the initial budget that I put together and presented to the Joint Ambulance Committee was under that initial guidance of a 2-step increase and 5%. And so I put together a comparison of all three, what those budget numbers look like for all three. The initial 2.5%, I'm sorry, 2-step increase 5%, just to 5%. And then looking at the current wage schedule, what would it be? What would it look like if it was a 1-step increase and 5% across? So I'm gonna beg your forgiveness because I do not have my glasses on, so I'm kind of looking at this from afar. But what this does with a 1-step increase, so it would allow us to move the advanced EMTs, full-time and part-time, not myself, just those staff, to step 5. And it would incorporate the 5% increase. We would be absorbing in our budget right around $6,400 to make that happen. No impact to the tax levy. It would come strictly out of our operating funds, which would be about 8 interfacility transfers that we would have to pull off to make that happen. So it certainly is within there. At the same time, I am trying to present an idea that is palatable to all parties. I mean, as the director of the ambulance service and emergency management and a county employee, I'm not trying to present something that stirs this pot up, or makes other departments against each other, because that's the last thing we need. At the same time, I do have to advocate for my employees because I need them in order for us to meet our demands. We run off of how many ambulance calls do we get. We can't go out and generate more ambulance calls. It's based on what our call volume is. The only way we can increase that is by taking transfers. The only way we can increase taking transfers is if we have staff. The only way we can have staff is if we can recruit them and retain them. We can be creative in how we bill, how we spend, how we track our expenses, the tools that we use, and we do that as diligently as I know how. And I think Supervisor Cooey could attest, because he's been on my committee for a long time. We're showing each year that we're able to cover our expenses and operate within a budget and be able to put money aside for other things. So I felt this approach was one that we're staying within the current wage scale. We're not asking to reclassify or spend more money on that at this point in time. Maybe that's something down the road the ambulance would pay for. It certainly is within our operating budget, we can cover that $6,400. And it would put our starting wage at $14.97 an hour at beginning and just over 15 after probation, which is not the 1650 or whatever, but again, it is a move forward. And, you know, I recognize we might not be able to make that whole gap jump in one move. So I felt that this was a reasonable thing, and I just was able to get this to Administrator Langrick this morning for his consideration. So I'll take questions.
Darren, this will help in recruitment and retention.
Well, you know,
Obviously.
I was asked by the Joint Ambulance Committee Chair about that too, and it certainly will help with retention. And I also am speaking to Administrator Langrick with the new facility. You know, there's a lot of excitement about that with the staff, with the new facility. And so, you know, we'll use that. That's a good retention tool. I think seeing an increase is a good tool to move forward. Recruitment, it certainly moves us closer, but this is something that, you know, through the business plan, I guess, we'll have to address what does it look like to be able to actually recruit and retain long term. But just trying to find the middle ground, one that works for the staff but works for the county overall.
Will the new facility be ready by Friday?
We will be able to back our ambulances in
Okay, good.
Monday afternoon.
Okay. Thank you. Didn't mean to throw the ringer at you. Administrator Langrick, what do you need from us today?
So in order for us to build the budget, because we're going to have to make the decisions on what stays and what goes, that has to all get pushed back out to departments with guidance then on what adjustments need to be made. Information comes back in our system. We have to rebuild it in our system and then have Derek then will go through and then redevelop all the summaries to ensure that we're in compliance with levy limits and all those different pieces. The more decisions you can make on what you want to do now is going to help get our departments and myself in position to finalize the budget. So some of the decision points on different things that you want to see added, things that you want to have taken out, adjustments that you would want to have made, the more that we can start chewing through now so we can get it, again, the guidance or the redirections put out there, the better.
Committee, do you want to take these one at a time, perhaps? We have the ambulance question in front of us. Does anyone wish to make a motion to that effect?
That motion to push that forward for $6,400 or whatever Darren needs to do to get hit in the budget.
Yes, without a levy impact.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by the gentleman here in the room. Been here too long again.
So just for clarification, so we make sure we get it correctly, that's going to be the motion included to do the 5% increase plus a step, and then you also are looking
starting at step three instead of step 2.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, those of you on web, do you understand the motion and the second?
I have
You
a
have
question.
Go ahead, Mr. Lopez.
So when we talked about the ambulance last time, I asked if there would be a profit that would be seen back to the county for that increased activity from the ambulance department. So I'm still wondering about that.
Can you comment on that?
Currently, the contracts that are between the county and all of the municipalities are written in a way that any money that goes above and over the expenses stays into that joint ambulance account.
Okay, Mr. Murphy Lopez, does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I guess it does. I'd be in favor of this if the county was going to be seeing some additional revenues from the wage increase. So I'd be very supportive of the wage increase, even above what is being talked about now, but only if there was a commitment that was going to be made that the ambulance would be pushing some of that money back to the county
Well, I think
for gen.
in the presentation I heard, you said that then we can do the transfers, and the transfers is where you make the money. So to me, it seems logical that, yes, there would be money to be made. Got to spend some to make some.
I guess I would suggest being on that committee, I would say where the money comes back to the county, Sean, is that it doesn't go out in capital expenditure. So that's the reason for that, is to build that back in so that the capital builds, so that we don't have to ask the county per se for money for an ambulance or as whatever. I think that's where you see it, Sean. It may not be directly like we hand a check back, but it's coming back on the other side of it.
Okay. I'm going to call for a vote on the presentation by Director Gudgeon.
I'm unmuting.
Who was that?
Sorry,
Yes, Clay,
I
we're
don't want to
gonna get to you.
Yeah.
Clay, we've got a motion before us. Let us deal with that and then we'll get to you. Okay, we're voting on the ambulance question as presented by Director Gudgeon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Does that give us? I think we're gonna have to take roll.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Luck.
are you sure Sheriff Porter was wanting to comment on this motion? I know that there is concern, and we've sort of hinted at it today, but about the,
Said he wants to speak on the jail administrator question.
oh, okay, all right. Yeah, I
Yes.
just think this is really a hard one because I know there's a lot of
Well,
departments that are
I'll
concerned.
recognize Sheriff Porter if he wants to speak to this. Clay, do you have a comment? Okay, Cheryl, I'm gonna have you take roll vote on the ambulance question.
Cooey,
Aye.
Murphy Lopez,
No.
Brewer,
Yes,
Luck,
No,
Batchel,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Your 42 motion carries.
all right, thank you. Now, why don't we talk about the jail administrator? And that has been recommended not to go forward by Administrator Langrick. Clay, I'll have you speak on this issue right now, please.
Sorry, I'm in the back of a car going down the highway.
Why don't you pull over?
So, sorry, I'm gonna try and figure out some audio things here. All right, so what I want to talk about is the fact that we have found ways to fund this position, and I don't know that that's been mentioned. We found an additional revenue stream that may cover the whole position, may not. It'll come close. And we also saved $85,000 a year for the next 3 years in jail meals, which will more than cover for the position. I just think that, you know, I can keep saying this until I'm blue in the face. We're the only jail in the state that doesn't have this position. It's a specialized position that runs the jail. There are a lot of things that are constantly changing. constantly evolving and as far as jail operations. And I think having this person who specializes in this and can help us stay up to date and stay current with changing regulations is important. Not only will they do that, but they're going to help us find more grants and more, I guess, revenue sources, if you will, to help reduce the budget.
Thank you, Clay.
Question?
I'm gonna turn the gavel over to someone else. Mr. Cooey, are you willing to take the gavel?
Sean wants to run it from you.
Well, Sean, do you want to try to run the meeting remotely, or can Mark do it from here?
No, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd rather Supervisor Cooey did it.
Okay,
Thanks, Sean. All right, so I guess.
Mr. Chair, I had a question for Sheriff Porter.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering what the ways were that you found to be possibly fund that position and what they are, and would they be ongoing?
So just to make sure I heard the question correctly, you're asking if what the funding source is, what the revenue source is?
Correct.
The funding source is jail sanctions. We're housing people for Department of Corrections that violated their rules of probation.
And that's not currently a revenue that we already recognize?
Well, we just started it. It did May or June we started it. We have a few months worth of data. Not as good as I initially thought it was going to be, but it's still pretty good revenue source. The last month was $7,000 for us, and it's kind of been trending in that area, maybe a little lower, potential to go higher. Originally, I thought it was going to be higher than that, but it seems to be hanging around that number. Additionally, it does create an additional staff burden as it intentionally increases our jail population.
Okay, thanks.
All right, anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I just have a comment and a couple comments on this. So I think, if after making all the, if after identifying all the budget reductions that has to be done here by October 31st for the Public Safety Committee, which includes the Sheriff's Department, if they feel like, yes, we can do this jail administrator on top of these potential cuts that, some of them might go to the referendum, or if the jail administrator goes to the referendum, I'm comfortable with the position there, but we've got this impending, situation with a referendum coming up. So, it's kind of like if you got a family with a mortgage and, one spouse is going to be losing their job on January 1st, 2024, and they haven't found a new job yet. Are you going to take out a home improvement loan on your mortgage? No, you're probably going to wait until you're sure that your second spouse is going to get a job so you can make those payments. And that's what I'm worried about with this. If you have to cut 10 deputies or put that on the referendum, wouldn't you want to know? It just seems like you'd want to know everything all together. So I don't know if you can comment on that at this point, Sheriff Porter, but that's kind of what's going through my head right now.
I guess, I guess you're exactly right. I don't know what the outcome of the resolution is going to be, but I also don't believe the taxpayers are going to stand by for you guys to cut the Sheriff's Department by $531,000 and reduce their public safety services by 20%. So I'm banking on we're not going to lose any positions either. So I've been playing with those numbers since that $531,000 number came out. I don't see a way it's gonna work that, is gonna be very pleasing to the taxpayers.
All right. Does anyone else have anything? So I guess we need a motion if we're gonna go forward with this or not. So I guess I'm looking for a motion.
So moved. Supervisor Gotchel.
Tim has a motion. Anybody for a second? Yeah, I'll second it because I'd like to see what we're gonna. I think this is another one of them cases where we just had with the ambulances. We have the opportunity to do something to make it better, to maybe, and we're have the money to some degree, you know, ambulance is a little easier because it doesn't take any tax levy, but I guess we'll just vote on this. Probably do a roll call vote, I would guess, Cheryl, just so. Yes.
This will be to approve the jail administrator position. Have Murphy Lopez,
No.
Melissa Luck,
No.
Gotchel,
Yes.
Carol,
No.
Cooey,
Yes.
2 yeses, 3 nos. Motion fails.
All right. Do we have anything else we want to go over on the budget?
Supervisor Cooey, may I make
Yes.
a comment?
Go ahead, Tim.
I need to leave. Will I take your quorum? I need to leave in a couple minutes here.
Yes, you will.
Yeah. So is there anything that we have to get through today that requires a quorum?
No, there is not. If we can put a lot of thought into when we want to have the next meeting, that might be time best spent.
I would guess we're gonna have multiple meetings this month.
If we want to try to do ETF, it has to go to county board on the 20th. It means we'd probably want to prep a resolution by end of next. Well, we could have the resolution, but the 20th, we need to have an ETF decision at 7 o'clock on the 20th. Or, 6:49 at the latest.
What about the 16th? At 1 o'clock? Does that work for everybody?
I can, what do I got here? There's an invitation.
Just so it gives you a little bit more time to, what about Sean?
Yep.
Melissa? Tim?
Did you say the 16th?
16th at 1 PM.
Yeah, it's good for me.
Yeah, I can do that.
And Sean?
I'm good.
All right. So then I guess we will adjourn to the 16th at 1 PM.
And we'll plan on picking up then with items 12 and on and coming back on, if that sounds like a plan of attack, Mr. Chair.
So that sounds great to me. Need a motion. I'll make the motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Carries. Thanks, everyone.
Hand the mic to Supervisor Cook. Watch it. Already left for it.
This is going, you know what I mean? Anywhere you're generating or taking care of it yourself, I'm sorry, there comes a point where we gotta look at growth instead of cuts. Maybe that's what we.
I want to make sure I understood that. It sounds like even if we approve that, they still have 500, they still gotta cut. So I didn't see any point in adding